morning. You're very welcome to this Farm Business Options webinar. My name is Cian Condon. I'm a dry stock advisor based in Manorhamilton in County Leitrim, but I also act as the National Goat Advisor for Teagasc, and I'll be the host this morning. We're very lucky today to be joined by Michael Finegan from Boyne Valley Farmhouse Cheese, and also by Sharon Peacock, who is from the Cockerham Goat Herd near Lancaster across the water in the UK. The format for this morning is that I will give a simple introduction to goat farming here in Ireland and a little bit on legislative requirements and that type of thing. And then both Michael and Sharon will speak for about 10 to 15 minutes each. And then we'll have some additional time for some questions then at that point. We'd like to keep things fairly interactive today. And at the bottom of your screen, you will see a question and answer function. Question and answer function where you can ask questions right throughout this morning's webinar. So if you want to send them in, and I will put them to the panelists then once they've completed the presentations. So without any further ado, I'm going to start my presentation here. So just bear with me 1 second. There we go. Okay. So this is I'm going to present a little bit now on just the basics of goat farming in Ireland. The basic of it is that if you go back about 100 years in Ireland, is that there was lots of goats here in the country. There was a lot of them here present in Ireland, about 100,000 probably on the agricultural census about 100 years ago. But those numbers have dwindled substantially over the years, down to about 9,000 at the moment. About 56% of these are in herds of over 50, and that's picked up by the goat census, which is run in conjunction with the sheep census each year. There is now one big issue with the goat census is that there is no distinction made between the type of animal that are in the country or the breeds. And so we don't know what the breakdown is between dairy, meat animals, and then other type of goats that are here, or the breeds. So, you know, the various different dairy breeds, boar, pygmies, whatever the case may be. Most of the large commercial herds are typically housed all year round. And then basically is that there is a very broad geographic spread in the numbers here in Ireland in the goats. So every county has a certain amount of animals in them, but typically is outside of the big herds is that they are kept in small numbers in various locations around the country. As it stands on the milk side of things is that the industry is more or less stagnant. In the last couple of decades of that, there has been no new entrant to process the milk. And as a result, then there's been no real major expansion in numbers of dairy milk farms in Ireland. Most of the products we produce here in Ireland are fresh milk, typically soft cheeses and yogurts then, and these require year-round production. So anyone considering getting into goats on the dairy side will be expected to milk through the winter months, 365 days a year. Teagasc are the only major processor of milk in the country. They buy about 60% of the commercially produced milk in Ireland. Most of that around the Midlands area, not quite coast to coast, but certainly the Midlands area. The remainder of the milk is bought by cheesemakers in various locations all over the country, and any real expansion in the market in recent years has been as a result of the increase in the demand for goat's cheese, which we've all seen on restaurant menus over the last 10 years or so. There's a range of dairy products made in Ireland. There's yogurt is made, obviously liquid milk, and then quite a broad range of cheeses made here all around the country. But it is difficult to get into the sector unless you're also processing. So Teagasc have a bunch of suppliers that they have had for a number of years, and those numbers don't change that often. The cheesemakers typically have their own suppliers as well. So unless you are considering processing or working with somebody to process your milk, it will be difficult to enter the sector. The meat goat side of things is relatively small. We don't know how many animals there are in the country. The numbers are relatively small, and people are dotted around doing it typically on a small scale around the country. There are also some of the out and out dairy animals and crosses from them entering the food chain, along with out and out meat type animals. Typically the boar breed is present in the country. There certainly seems to be demand from what I'm picking up, both within the conventional kind of retail trade and restaurant trade, and also then the various different ethnic outlets. And goat's meat is one type of meat that it's eaten by virtually all ethnic groups around the world, and most of them would have different spec of animal that they want to buy. But it's hard to quantify the amount of demand that's out there, the level of it. Most of the producers, as I mentioned, are quite small, and they've sourced their own outlets. They have a butcher or a restaurant, or maybe two of them, that they send animals into reasonably regularly. And that's very important, is having a steady supply. So buying a number of goats off, a farm or a dairy farm, whatever the case is, and expecting to rear 10 or 15 animals and then sell them to a factory or bring them to a butcher and sell them in one batch, that's not going to work. You need to be able to sell an animal, be it one animal a week, a fortnight, a month, whatever the case is initially, so that at least they can tell their customers it will be in on this particular date, and that has to be reliable. That steady vision of the product on the shelf will also lend itself to improving the demand for the program on the product on a long ongoing basis. It's very hard to quantify the cost of rearing these animals, because the type of animal varies from an out and out meat type animal right the way through to quite a, what could be a poor dairy type animal. And they're run in various different systems. So there's a multitude of different ways of rearing these animals up for meat. So the cost, trying to estimate cost, is quite difficult before you get started. Just from a legislative point of view, you must have a herd number or the equivalent. If you have an existing herd number, you must contact your local DVO, District Veterinary Office, and discuss with them about getting that enabled to carry caprines or goats. Their registration and tagging requirements are very similar to the sheep. Basically, they're identical. Every goat must carry 2 tags, and all the animals and all your movements and everything like that must be recorded in your herd register, the same as a flock register for sheep. On the nitrate side, nutrients and so on, these limits must be adhered to as well. So the maximum organic nitrogen, which is effectively a stocking rate, is 170 kilos of nitrogen per hectare, which is about equivalent to 18 goats per hectare. So, it's quite a high limit, but it's just that has to be adhered to. And then the other things like provide adequate storage for waste, manure, urine, and then any dairy waste then if you're also milking. Just other some points of note as well. Goats require TB testing. So any animal that's being milked, this is on the dairy side, if you're supplying milk or a dairy type product, your goats must be tested for TB, the same as dairy cows. There is little veterinary support, and that's not a slight on the veterinary side. It's just that the numbers distributed around the country are relatively small, and most vets will have few calls in a year that they can get experience on working with goats. So, a lot of the veterinary support kind of comes from within the goat community in the country. They have poor immunity to internal parasites. So goats are they're browsers, they're not grazers like cattle or sheep, and they don't have that kind of genetic pre-programming to build up resistance to roundworms, and that's something that must be watched at all times. They're highly selective feeders. People think goats eat everything, but that's not necessarily the case. They will taste everything. They're really inquisitive animals, very intelligent animals, and they'll try everything. They'll eat what they like, and they'll leave everything they don't like, and that typically has to be removed from in front of them every day because they will not eat it. They potentially high intakes. If you're used to dealing with cattle or sheep, you say, for an example, a beef animal will eat about 2% of its body weight in dry matter a day. Goats can eat 3, 4, 5, and in exceptional animals, maybe 6% of their body weight in a day. So just to be aware that, the amount that we'll eat is far more. They're high producing animals. And then just to be aware that the housing and facilities at the moment, the TAMS grant scheme is still there, and that they are all eligible for grant aid under TAMS. So what I would just conclude, just as a very quick intro, is to do your research, and lots of it. Go out there, find out as much as you can about goats. If you can, talk to people who are in the sector already, get their knowledge, get their experience, get their advice on what to do. Get a mentor is a great one. So if there's somebody close by you that's doing it, if they will if they would be kind enough to answer the phone to you every now and again, if you're getting set up, you will have questions to bounce off them. And then some additional information. So there's some on the Teagasc Goat page on our own national website, and there is additional information going up there at the moment, and will go up in the coming weeks. The Irish Goat Hub is a page I've put up, which is a list of links to more or less all of the Irish websites that are goat related. So it's a good source of information there, the Irish Goat Hub. And then lastly, then the Irish Goat Producers Association Facebook page. And there are people on that page who are working with goats for decades. And it is a brilliant place to start just to talk about goats with other people who have that general interest. It's a great place to start and to get basic information on. So that's it. That's my basic presentation. What we will do at this point is I will move on straight away to Michael. Michael, if you can unmute there, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
And yes, I can hear you clearly there. And can you put up your presentation there, please, Michael?
Okay. That is the one. Okay.
That's perfect. Thanks, Michael.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Finegan, and I'm from Boyne Valley Farmhouse Cheese. Cian kindly said I was an expert, but I don't know how much of an expert I actually am, but sure I'll tell you what I can. So I basically, we're milking about 250 goats. We're using about 40 acres for that. We do kind of a few different cuts of silage. It's mainly me full time, and then my wife is a nurse, and she's a great help in the farm with feeding the baby kids and helping me in the cheese room and milking and things. So the farmers' wives are never given enough credit. I, like Cian said, I milk all year round, so every day of the year. So I have a consistent supply of milk. I'm kind of 50-50 spring and autumn kidding, and I have a 20-a-side rapid exit Gascoigne milking power, which I milk through. It takes about an hour and a half to milk the 250 goats, a bit longer in the morning and a bit less in the evening. And then also it's kind of seasonal. At the moment, we just finished kidding there, and the goats are peaking now, are kind of pumping out the milk, so it takes a bit longer. And the goats are inside all year round on straw. There's a few pictures there. The picture on the left there, that's them in the collecting yard, and the picture on the right there gives you an idea of our kind of central passageway. I use bales, obviously silage, and I kind of drop them in lumps and fork it into the goats. So we have four kind of main breeds: the Salon, which is the white goat, kind of like the Frisian, gives the most amount of milk. Then we've Toggenburg, Alpine, and Nubian. We've very few Nubians actually. They would give the least amount of milk, but that was the highest in solids, which is good for cheese making. But I just don't have many in the herd. We would average about 2.7 litres a day. Again, that goes up and down throughout the season. We vaccinate with Covaxin 10. I've used different ones. You can use Heptavac P or Covaxin 8. We actually, one of the issues I had probably over the years is I wasn't as strict on it, and that's definitely something to keep up with, just like sheep, I suppose, and cattle. You'd be surprised how many kind of illnesses they can get if you don't keep their vaccinations up. Yeah, the kidding were generally March and then in October, and silage wise, like I want to get to about 700 bales. I'm kind of using about 2 bales a day. Again, every kind of cut is slightly different. That's one of the challenges in the goat farming. It's getting kind of nearly haylage is what I like. Just good dry, high dry matter silage. We reseeded about 17 acres there last year, and that makes a huge difference having really good quality grass. Then we use barley straw. A lot of our farm here is in tillage, and so we have kind of straw right beside us, so we get really good straw because they actually love to eat the straw as well. It's very good for their digestion. We started in 2008 as supplying Glenisc. So all our milk went there to start, and we got the Farm Waste Management grant to build our shed. So you know, it was a 70% grant. So that's how we started. We built everything at one time. On the cheese side of things, we started that in 2010. Basically, when the recession hit, they obviously that hit Glenisc with their sales, and the milk prices started to get a bit volatile. So we said here, well, wouldn't it be great if we had our own product? And we looked at bottled milk or yogurt, and we settled on cheese because I like cheese myself, and we saw a gap in the market. There was no blue goat's cheese in Ireland, so we started with that. We make and now we have a second cheese, a Boyne Valley Bond, which is like a Tom style cheese. Basically, once we upgraded the system a few years ago, the facility, it means I can make a second cheese. I am a tiny cheese maker, but I still produce about 3.5 to 4 tons of cheese a year. Like the big guys would be 20 ton plus. My cheese goes to restaurants and hotels all around the country, and also to the likes of specialized cheese shops like Sheridan's and things, and it does go into some supermarkets as well. We've won lots of awards for both the cheese. The Bourne has won 3 stars in the Great Taste Awards and Best Irish Cheese in the British Cheese Awards, so it's done very well. There's gives you a little idea on the left there. That's my cheese vat. I have a 600 litre cheese vat, and I would generally do kind of 2 batches a week, kind of all year round. And my cheese will then go into the ripening room. There's me with my cheese on the boards. It'll stay on the boards for a minimum of 2 months, where I have to turn it regularly and rub it and mind it. You have to keep that room at 12 degrees. So basically, it's just a cheese maturing room. About getting into cheese making, if you're going to go that route, Teagasc and Moorpark do courses down there, and they're very good. They have a whole kind of research and development section down there, and it's brilliant. There's lots of grants you can get. I would recommend the innovation voucher. I got that, and it's like a €5,000 research grant. So you can actually put that towards Moorpark, and they can, like for me, they came up and taught me. They helped me design my premises and helped me come up here and show me how to make cheese with my equipment. So that was, and give me cheese recipes, which was just absolutely vital at the start. There's Leo grants, and there's the leader as well. So for getting grants towards equipment and things. So definitely look into it. Some are easier than others to get. You want to decide what type of cheese you're going to go into. So I'm making a semi-hard cheese, and that suits me because I can kind of, in one way, I can make it and I don't have to worry about any sort of it going off. Like, so the soft cheeses are great in that there's a quick turnaround. You make them and you sell them within a few weeks, and you generally get a better yield, and you get more cheese out of the milk. But the downside is that obviously it's a short shelf life. So if anything happens, like at the moment, this coronavirus, cheese sales have just been decimated in the restaurant front. So if you have a ton of cheese made, you have nowhere for it to go. Whereas mine, because it's ripening there, I don't have to worry too much about it going off. I can just stop making cheese for a bit and use up whatever cheese I have. So that's why I've gone for it. A cheddar cheese is very popular with cow cheese makers because you can make a lot of cheese and you're not going to be selling it for 6 months to a year. So you can just make away. Again, getting into it, how big do you want to get? Like, again, I'm a one-man unit, so I milk the goats and I make the cheese and I do all the farm work, and it's kind of mainly me. And I don't want to get much bigger than that. I am thinking about getting a bit of part-time help to grow the cheese a bit more, but bigger is not always better. On the building side, I converted the stone building that we had on the farm into the cheese making unit, so I didn't have to build an actual building. So we just fitted out what we had there. And it's kind of 3 main rooms in it. There's the cheese making room, the ripening room, and then there'll be like a handling and packaging room. So that worked out very well for me. Again, here's the cheeses. So that's the Boyne Valley Blues. I pasteurize my cheese. So I pasteurize my cheese I pasteurize the milk in the cheese vat. It's called batch pasteurizing. And you have to heat the milk up to 63 degrees for half an hour. And it's a semi-hard blue goat's cheese. So it's the only pasteurized blue goat's cheese made in Ireland. And again, it's mild to medium in strength. It's a natural rind. If you're in the shops, you'll see lots of different types of coverings on cheese, like the wax and kind of plastic covering. So I've gone the natural rind route, and again, it's the minimum of 6 weeks matured. That one there is, that you can see in the picture there, is about that. What happens basically when you mature longer is the blue mold will just keep on growing, and it gets really strong. Some people love that. Some of the buyers and chefs and shops love that, and some people love those strong, stinky cheeses. But generally, I found that most people prefer the mild to medium. So, and the shops have told me that they like they said to me, Michael, the mild, creamy blues sell. So the guys in the shops know what they're talking about. And there's my Boyne Valley Bond. So in 2016, when we extended the cheese making facility, I kind of upgraded it, and it allowed me to I had the better facilities to make another cheese. So I only had blue at the start, and now I was able to make a white cheese. So it's based on French Tom style cheese, and I press it slightly. So you can see there in that picture, it's got a much smoother paste. There's no kind of holes in the middle of the cheese, and it's proven very, very popular, and I've won a lot more awards with the white cheese. I suppose in general, more people would eat white cheese than blue, but blue is very popular around Christmas time. I do a lot on social media because we do farm tours as well, and we're very involved kind of in the food tourism. So I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook there, and we're in the Boyne Valley region. There's a fantastic food kind of what would you call it? Body called the Boyne Valley Flavors, which has kind of got all the producers and all the restaurants and hotels and everything. And we do events throughout the summer months. This year, of course, everything's been cancelled. But if you Google Boyne Valley Flavors, you'll see they've done amazing work in putting events on throughout the year. And through that, we have farm buses come to us, and as part of the Slane Food Circle, which is kind of a smaller circle of us within the Boyne Valley. There's a cider maker, a rapeseed oil maker there, and an organic farmer. And the four of us will do tours. You'll hop on a bus and you'll come to the four of us, and then we'll go barbecue at the end. And it's proved very, very popular. So yeah, I think that's most of what I was going to say. Just loads of other, I suppose, things that little things. I suppose some of the challenges on the goat side would be that the kid rearing is definitely very, challenging, and just getting over that first month is definitely very hard. It's similar to lambs, they're very fickle, and every year we think we have it nailed, and then something happens. Like last year, for instance, we got a weird type of pneumonia that got into them that we'd never had before, and that caught us off guard. So just every year is learning. I think anybody that has farm animals, you'll know that something seems to pop up different every year. It's silage for the goats, so just trying to make sure you've got good quality silage every year is definitely tricky because of the weather, and just getting it cut at the right time, making sure the fertilizer's out, and making sure the grass is the correct height. That's why we reseeded there, so that when we started here first, we reseeded, so it was over 10 years since we'd done it, so we said we'd do those fields again. It just makes a huge difference. You can see the milk increasing when you've got that much better grass. On the cheese making side, some of the challenges are, I suppose, manage my time. Because I'm a small, kind of mainly one-man unit, you're trying to balance everything. So, like for instance, yesterday I was making cheese and my wife was working. So I'm making cheese and dropping kids to school. And yesterday a department inspector was coming to watch me making a bit of cheese as well. So I didn't know whether I was coming or going. And the paperwork, if you're going to go into anything to do with food, you will see the HACCP plan, it's just can be a bit of a head melt now at the start. There's so much stuff you have to learn. If you think there's a lot of paperwork when you're farming, there's another 10 times more when it comes to food. I often joke, a lot of cheesemakers will joke as well, the cleaning side of things. Cheese making is 10% cheese making and 90% cleaning. So you're kind of sanitizing beforehand, you're cleaning all the time during it, and then afterwards, there's a huge amount of cleaning of all the equipment, and you're constantly cleaning walls and floors and ceilings, and you're constantly sending stuff to the lab for the department, for the Listeria, coli, and Staphylococcus. So there's lots of things you have to be careful of. So yeah, that's kind of I think most of what I was going to say. I don't know if Cian wants to jump in there. I think. I think time-wise, I wasn't too bad.
No, you're bang on time, Michael. Fair play. Look, thanks a million, Michael. That's very good. If you want to stop sharing your screen, Michael, that'd be great.
Yeah, no problem at all.
There's actually been a rush of questions in there in the last few minutes, and just don't forget that at the bottom of your screen, Q&A.
I can see it there now. Yeah.
Yeah. So anybody wants to send in any questions, send them in there, and we'll do our best to get as many as possible answered today. Sharon, if you want to turn on your camera there and maybe come off mute.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's done.
We can.
I don't seem to.
Oh, there you go. Hear me? Yeah, that could be down to a slight delay. Yeah. So, Michael,
okay.
you can go on mute there and turn off your camera. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And what I'll do is I will share your presentation from here. Thanks, Sharon. And you can go ahead. So just bear with me.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm Sharon Peacock. We have Cockerham Goats. The history of the meat goat in the UK is we started in 2000, and at that point in time there were 5 or 6 producers of goat meat in the UK. That's grown hugely to the point there's 50, 60 producers now. We are one of the longest established doing dedicated meat goats. So we don't do any dairy goats and we don't take any dairy goats in. Our history was we started with the boar goat, which is the world's first meat breed of goats produced specifically for meat production. However, we were finding that they weren't an investment. They had high inputs, low outputs, high demand on me as a person time-wise. So since 15 years ago, we actually created or started to create our own type of goat, which we're now calling the British meat goat. So the benefits of the British meat goat over the boer are it's a hardier animal. We're now managing to winter out these animals. So we've got a hardiness. We've crossed it with the British native, which was the Cashmere goat. And we've got a warmer coat. Sorry, the one in the top right was Cashmere, middle is the British meat goat, and the top left is the boar goat. We managed to reduce the input needs on these animals through the fact that the Cashmere was a naturally selected animal. So she's grown and developed for what is actually achievable of obtainability. We're getting a low requirements of feed, so they're not having any forage for the majority of the winter. They're not having any feed requirements. This year, for the first time, we've actually not fed even pre-tupping this year. We're hoping that we'll see what happens with that, and hoping it won't have too great an impact on kidding percentage. We're finding that the British meat goat that we're creating is giving just as good a carcass as the boar goat, but because the input costs are lower and the input of man hours is lower, the profit margin is significantly higher on our British meat goat. So I'm trying to flick through my slides as well, and I haven't got them on my screen. Can we go through a couple, Cian, please? Cheers, thank you. We have cut the forage, like it says on there. We now don't feed any forage. You can see from the picture on there that my goats live out right through snow, rain, wind, the lot. Some have man-made shelter, but we have actually got to the stage now where some of our goats don't even need man-made shelter. They can shelter under hedge lines and bushes, so that helps on that respect. The next one, can we go on one? So we've got lower feed requirements. As I say, we've not fed anything this autumn at all. So these adult stock that are now being tupped haven't had any hard feed since kidding season. So they had a fortnight before they kidded, and they have a fortnight after they kidded. So 1 month of hard feed, as opposed to where the dairy industry are saying that they need and obviously have to be fed every day for milk production. We've got that down to next to nothing. So similar to a sheep industry. We've also increased kidding percentage. through selection, which is the next one, please. So we've managed to get our Cashmere Boer cross, our British meat goat, to kid down about 180, 190%, where we were finding the Boers were about 160. So lower outputs from the Boers with higher inputs obviously impacts your profit margin significantly. Obviously these days people are looking at the environmental impact of farming. It's the big thing. So all of what we've done and are currently continuing to do is look at sustainability, both financially and environmentally. To keep, so we've just gone on another slide again, we're keeping the kidding ease. Obviously that's your manpower, that's medicine needs. So if you've got an animal that has to be an assisted kidding, obviously you've got drug use, antibiotic use, more there. So the more we can get an easy kidding, which we're getting from our British meat goats, the better that cuts inputs again, particularly on medicines, which we know is bad for the environment. We've also got that to the stage we'll see that we're kidding outdoors in the fields, the same as you would be doing with the sheep. And our British meat goat has significantly better mothering ability than we were finding with the Boer goat. So the Boer really needed to kid indoors, and we found were not as good at mothering on, so they needed to be in individual pens, and particular attention paid to making sure they mothered onto their kids. We've dealt with that situation by getting this mothering ability. We're also getting significantly higher survivability rates on the kids. Again, all putting the needs for wormers, coccidioids, antibiotics, medicines. The more we can cut that, the better the profit margin. We all know farming profit margins are not great, so the better we can make that, the more significant. We're keeping the adult stock healthier because they're out, because they're grazing, because they're having that natural life, and obviously a healthier animal gives healthier kids. We're getting our survival rate in 2019 was 96.5% survival rate, which is really high. We are increasing, I've not turned my slides over as quickly as you have. We're looking at disease tolerance and worm tolerance. Cian mentioned evolution. They've never developed any tolerance to a worm burden. That's very, very true of goats in general. We are increasing our tolerance in these goats with these British native crosses. They have a higher tolerance to worms, which means we can reduce our worm inputs. We do use quite a high level of mineral, so we supplement with a lot of minerals. The goats have a high mineral requirement, and as we're not using any hard feed, we have to give them that easier way or in a thorough way. And so long as you keep your zinc and your copper and your cobalt high enough, then we don't get the worm problems that we were getting in the housed goats. It is partly a problem in the dairy industry because obviously it adds a meat withdrawal and a milk withdrawal time every time you worm them. So the dairy industry obviously can't take milk once they've wormed, which is why they're housing them. But we can keep our meat goats out because we can worm the adult stock because it's not affecting the meat production. We do finish our meat finishers on hard feed and various bits and pieces purely for the meat withdrawal times. We're also increasing longevity in animals. So this animal on the screen in the picture now, she was 14 years old when she produced for us. Speaking, live to 8, 10, 12 years old. And obviously it costs the same to raise those animals to breeding age, no matter how long they go on for. So all that helps the profit margin, and it all helps the sustainability of the meat. In that, if you spend so much getting them ready and then can breed from them for 14 longer time, and it reduces the waste. And obviously your people who are looking at animal welfare don't want to see animals as a waste product. So if you can keep your longevity on your animals, that all helps on that respect. We here are dedicated to producing high quality meat from meat breeds of goat, so the Boer and now our British meat goat. There are also other elements to the meat industry, which the main one being the dairy cull, which obviously has its benefits. They are talking in huge numbers. So we have between 400 and 500 animals on site at any one time. Some of the dairy herds in England are talking into the tiny drop in the ocean of meat production. And the dairy guys can fill the demand for huge numbers, which a dairy cull or dairy waste, it has a lower fat levels on content in the meat, and that lower fat content causes a tougher meat. So it's better for processing for sausages and burgers and stewing meat. And obviously a lot of people think that the only thing you can really do with goat meat is curry it or stew it. We are trying to encourage people to realise that there are normal, shall we say, normal ways to eat goat meat. So we sell only roasting joints and goat chops and things like that that can actually be just cooked in the oven in a UK traditional manner in exactly the same way as you would cook a piece of lamb. So the dairy meat is helpful in that it fills demand on the high demand products like goat, diced goat for curries and for stews, and it fits that bill perfectly. The only problem with the dairy is it is quite expensive to replace them, and then the carcass is clearly not as good, in the same way as a carcass off a black and white cow shouldn't be as good as a carcass off a prime beef cow. So it's good for processing, good for stewing, but it'll take more to get it there. So your profit margins will not be as good off a dairy, but you can turn around a lot of them, which we can't turn around a lot in the industry because, as I say, we're one of the biggest and we've 400 to 500 animals. The Boer goat run into the dairy herd was reasonably popular and still is something that is being done. But we didn't, when we tried it ourselves, we didn't find the Boer brought the dairy carcass up a significant amount, because the dairy carcass is so weak compared that it does bring it up a little bit, but it doesn't bring it up significantly. And obviously, if you put a male into a dairy herd, you can impact your milk production from your dairy goats. So a lot of the dairy herds are not comfortable with the idea of putting in a meat animal long term. So really, you're looking at the processing, sausages, burgers, swing meat, that sort of thing. With regard to sales, personally, we sell everything directly to the consumer. We don't find there's a great enough profit in it to sell through a third butchers, restaurants, is that they need such high quantity or they need a specific item, so they'll want all the legs, but that stops you being able to sell to the general consumer a half animal. If you've sold legs to one customer and you sell all of one part, you're stuck with the parts that maybe are not so desirable. So we instruct all we don't find a particular demographic of customer for the meat. So we're finding it's all age ranges, it's all ethnic origins, a group that are demanding it more than others. With world travel these days, people have eaten it somewhere else. Myself and my husband and a couple of the longer standing producers, now people have tried goat meat before regularly or are certainly open to the idea of trying it. 20 years ago, probably the greatest proportion said, ooh, yuck, I'm not sure of that. I've never had that before. And now I would proportion have tried it, and we get very few pulled up noses at markets any longer. We do sell the goat meat on the healthy element. It is a lower fat product than lamb. As I say, the meat breeds do have some meat, but that's tenderizing the meat, that's sweetening the meat, and that's making it cook in a shorter cook time. We do push our personal product as being environmentally sustainable, and that is such a big part of the market these days. Our customers are looking for high animal welfare, environmental sustainability product, and that's a market we're trying to make sure we're tapping into at the very beginning. We've been doing it personally for ourselves for 20 years before it was the buzzword, but it's definitely the way forward, I believe, for smaller farms like ourselves. It's go. This is a one-man band situation. I'm here, I'm doing all this work on my own, I'm doing all the marketing, and again, as he said, 10% of actual dealing with goats, 90% of dealing with paperwork and customers and legislation, all the other bits. The boring bits is the smallest part, is the biggest part, unfortunately. We do need to sell to the customer directly, find that we're making enough profit on it. We personally, unlike Michael, who's processing his product himself, we don't legally have to go through an abattoir, and they legally have to be cut at a licensed cutting plant. And it wasn't viable for us to look at putting a cutting plant on site. So we actually work with another small business who do all our cutting for us. That saves us any trading standards, weights and measures. That's all dealt with by someone else. And I always recommend that we would suggest get involved with the trading standards. You do the animal alive, and then you do the animal processed into packs, labelled up and priced up. And if you butcher, you can also use that on your sustainability, that you're supporting other small businesses. With regard to meat, like I say, we are trying to ensure that people look at eating it as a joint of goat meat. We try to encourage people to not think of the stereotypical uses. We don't have any recipes for curry. We don't sell any diced product. There's plenty of diced goat meat available. There's plenty of imported goat meat. So we're sticking to our niche market of high quality products and all the things that tick the boxes for us in that respect. So we have a good web page, and it all sells on that. Actually, at the beginning of lockdown, we sold out within a couple of days of every piece of product we could get, and as soon as we could get back on top of the product, we sell out again. We're actually currently sold out until into January. October is the best month of the year for selling goat meat, due to the fact that there's a Nepalese festival called Teagasc, which is essentially Nepalese Christmas, and we could sell all the goat meat we had at that time, but we have processing limitations on how much fridge and freezer space we've got. So October is very busy, and obviously Christmas is very busy, but this year it's been definitely year round. You do need to, we managed to produce our kids all in one kidding season, in much the same as lambing. So we do all our kidding in March. In about 2.5 weeks, we can kid them all, generally speaking. But we then have year-round meat production by encouraging some to finish faster than others, and also because we have this, what's technically a crossbred type of animal, some do finish faster than others. Very best meat isn't until they're about 12 months old, so we don't rush them. We don't want them ready too soon. Some of the boar goats, people are claiming, can be finished at 3 months, but to me they don't taste of a great deal then. But it is an option. If you wanted to kid in the spring and have everything gone in the autumn, then you could finish all those animals before it got too deep into winter, and cut the number of stock you'd got on your farm in the winter. But it would mean that you wouldn't have, customers want year-round supply. If you tell a customer that they've got to wait several months before you've got any meat left, and they tend to move on to someone else. And these days there is someone else. So once upon a time we could make them wait for a long time because there was only us. As there are more producers, that doesn't happen any longer. We have to have that year-round supply. But this time of year, like I say, we're sold out till January. We're now selling our January meat batch. So I think that's about all I was going to say. I think I've done all right for time, Cian. Is that okay? And obviously, if there's any questions, do shout up.
Yes, very good. Thank you very much, Sharon. Actually, I'll ask you to leave on your camera, and Michael as well, please, if you want to come back on the screen there, please, Michael. And we'll go through. So there has been a huge number of questions after coming in. I know Michael has shared some of them off screen, and I might just put some of them to Michael again.
Okay.
Look, there are lots of questions. Some of the stuff, I'll just fire a couple of bits there. This is to both you, Sharon, if you're still there. You might just put your screen back on. Just Michael, while we're talking, just one of the questions there, maybe to both of you, is about digital tools. So what are you using there by means of? I know you mentioned social media yourself, Michael. Is there anything else you're using? Anything digitally related, working to the computer, that you're either using at the moment or that you're thinking of using, that you think might help you manage either the business or your time better?
Well, I suppose on the cheese side of things, I suppose, like I said there, I would do an awful lot through social media. A lot of the chefs would actually buy cheese or order cheese off me through the likes of Twitter or Instagram. So that's a huge part of my time. What I plan to do more of is my website. I need to update my website, and actually I just done a course, a webinar there with the Mead Leo about trying to get maybe a bit of funding to upgrade, because basically in the whole COVID times, there's a lot more of the cheesemakers and food producers selling online. So I have to kind of update my website to be able to facilitate that, payments and things. And now it's a big leap for me because time, it's all about time. When you're, what I like to do is deal with the wholesalers and the big buyers, because they kind of order like a few grand's worth of cheese off you in one go. Whereas if you're selling 50 quid at a time to tons of different people, and you have to box up all of these, I have spoke to cheesemakers and they said that's the one big thing they didn't think of, was that you spend an awful lot of time parceling up, packages to send off with Fastways and things. So, but it's going to be a learning curve, and we'll go with the flow.
Okay, and Sharon, the same to you. Are there any digital tools that you're using to try and aid you in selling your product or free up time or anything like that?
With goats management wise, goats in England, I don't know if it's the same in Ireland, goats in England don't legally need an electronic tag, but we have actually moved to putting electronic tags in our goats a few years ago, because it would be a lot easier to keep track of kidding percentages and data like that if we get more electronic. Currently, I type everything into Excel, but it would be lovely to zap them. And again, along with Michael, we would look at social media. It would appear to be the way that we need to advertise and promote the business and increase sales. I'm personally not looking at where my say wants the fewer, bigger customers. I prefer my less small, because then when a customer pulls out, I've lost a small sale. Those regular small incomes rather than big incomes. So I'm happy with smaller customers.
Okay, very good. Just again, there are a good few questions on mineral supplementation. So maybe we'll come back to you, Michael, firstly, just about your use of either mineral or salt licks. And I don't want you to mention necessarily brands, but when they go in, their effectiveness and so on. And then we'll come over maybe, and we might get you to mention as well, Sharon, about when they're introduced and how effective they are and so on. So
so on minerals, first of all, the meal that we give the goats will be tailored towards goats, so they know that the balance in the meal itself is correct. Obviously, to highlight it to everybody out there, copper is an important one in the goat thing. Isn't that it's not the same as sheep. A lot of people have made that mistake. You can't. I think goats need copper, whereas is it poisonous to sheep, or is it something along those lines? So there's that, and then so we would give the goats throughout the year salt licks, absolutely, and then kind of before kidding time, about a month or so before kidding time, we would get kind of a beef salt or a beef kind of mineral lick, those tubs, and we would put them in with the goats just to kind of boost and make sure they have absolutely enough of everything. So that's kind of what I would do on the mineral side.
And the same, Sharon, if you can hear me there, just the same question to you about introducing minerals to your animals. Is there a particular time of year or age or whatever the case is?
You can do this, Sharon.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Sharon. Yeah.
Our goats have mineral access at all times because we haven't got the hard feed going in, so we're putting a daily amount in. So we have tubbed molasses at all times for our stocks from few meat goats, but our meat goats on our property have the soil analysed, the forage analysed, and we also regularly take from the goats to keep an eye on the mineral requirements. Goats have high copper, as was mentioned. They also have a zinc requirement and a high cobalt requirement. So we know we're fairly quick at spotting low minerals in them. The impact of that, you see dry coats, you see dry ears. They will have access to minerals, free access at all times of the year. From a few days on, they will start to look at licks.
And just, I might add a little question there is, have you looked or have you ever used boluses in the past, or what's your thoughts on that particular means of mineral supplementation?
Yeah,
we copper bolus every 2 to 3 months. Occasionally, 6 months between copper bolus and copper bolus. Okay,
that's very good. Thanks very much. So maybe back to Michael. You answered a number of questions, Michael, there. As I said off screen, and I'll talk to before we finish on the additional questions, because we have a huge number of questions in. Just about your thoughts on organic product.
Yeah, I saw a couple of the questions there. Ourselves, we have no interest in, I suppose, in going organic at the moment. There isn't much of a demand that we can see. We definitely haven't had any, anybody asking for it. So no, I that's not something I'm interested in the moment, and I haven't really heard of anybody talking about it.
Yeah. And Sharon, just in the UK, are there people producing organic goat's meat, or do you think there's a demand for that type of product? Be it in the UK or Ireland?
As far as I know, a few people tried organic, but because of the goat's worm situation, it's really hard to do organically. So personally, the way we run is animal welfare, and we sell that part of our business over organic, because actually there are things they need to keep them healthy that I'm not sure, certainly on our farm, we could achieve organically. So I'm not doing it now.
Okay, I remember discussing with somebody before, and they said that goats were niche enough without adding the organic label as well.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know if you think that's the same. Maybe back to Michael there again. Just a couple of comments again about general management, about just firstly bedding, what way they're managed, and maybe why, if you want, and then why you've gone, like, what's your thoughts on zero grazing as opposed to silage? Obviously, both are carried out quite commonly in Ireland.
Yeah, so on the bedding, we have a deep bed system. We use barley straw. We have a lot of tillage ground here, so we have our own straw, which is very handy right beside us. And we found the barley, because they eat the barley straw as well, which is very good for the rumen development. So we would throw straw in basically every day. Funny enough, it all depends on the weather. Even though they're inside, it depends on the weather. If it's really damp weather, it will be damper inside as well, and you can tend to use more straw. And also, depending on what type of silage you're feeding. So if you have a dry silage, it will, their dung is dry and they won't go through the straw. Whereas if it's a kind of a more wetter type, it'll go through them when you're bedding more.
Yeah.
You were saying silage and.
Okay, I think there's a delay on the line, Michael. Yeah.
Oh, is there?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Zero grazing. I thought about it, but you have to be. I'm not a machinery person, I suppose, is the short answer. So there's the cost of buying that machine and then buying an extra tractor, and then also the weather. So it's fantastic. There's no doubt about it. Zero grazing is fantastic if the weather is good and you're bringing in lovely dry, fresh grass. They will pump out the milk. There's no doubt about it. And a few of the goat guys do it down in the southern half or the Midlands, and especially in Europe, it's very popular. But I know some of the other goat guys that have tried it and stopped, because when you get a few wet months or a wet summer and you're bringing in milk grass, it just absolutely goes through them, and it's very hard to keep them clean. And especially then for me as a cheesemaker, I have heard of some cheesemakers at zero graze. If you bring in wet grass, it can affect the cheese because the quality of the grass. So there was a few things there. So I've kept it simple. I just try and make good high dry matter silage with good quality grass, and it's just simple for me.
Sure, I think that, again, I know you said that, Michael, there, and I've heard it from other people as well, is the thing about feeding silage is you know exactly what's going in 365 days a year. There's no, for the quality of the product you're producing yourself. Back to Sharon there. Sharon, if you can unmute your microphone.
So I can talk through my phone instead of just computer.
Okay, so Barry will...
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me? So just wondering there, a couple of questions, Sharon, on, and I know you mentioned the Nepalese market there, is do you target specific markets? Oh. Can you hear me there, Sharon? Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. It's just wondering, Sharon, you mentioned the Nepalese market. Do you target specific, times of year to finish animals, or how do you select weights to finish animals, or do you push on animals to finish to aim for specific, ethnic groupings or whatever the case is?
Yeah, my Nepalese market is for an older animal in October. So the way we work, we can finish animals from about 6 months old, and they'll finish until around 18 months. So we get the year-round supply. As 18 months run out, the 6 months start. We do keep some back for that October market, and then we move into the young animals from sort of November, December, and January. Those animals are at the younger end of what we would like. We kill all by weight, so we're actually slaughtering at about 90 pounds live weight. Sorry, my scales are in pounds, so I can't do it in kilos. And the way we manage to get some to finish before others is by leaving them out. So we keep them out at grass, and then we do finish indoors for the last month or 6 weeks. And if we bring in a selection for finishing, and then we do have to hard feed those are the only animals that are on hard feed, and then they finish. And at all times, we may have 2, maybe 3 groups finishing.
That's great. Thanks, Sharon. Just another question there that maybe addresses to both of you is about your shipping. With most of the sales coming on the internet at the moment, certainly, but just in general, is what way do you ship, package, move your product on to the consumers? So maybe Michael, you come back, yeah.
Yeah, well, so for me, a lot of my big, the big wholesalers that I would deal with, they have vans on the road. So they are dropping off cheese to restaurants and hotels in the area, and they will swing by and pick up my cheese on kind of certain days. And then I'm very close here to Sheridan's Cheesemonger's warehouse. So I can just drop the cheese up to them, which is very handy. I'm very lucky. And of course, they've got shops all over Ireland. And then apart from that, I would send a lot of cheese with a courier. So basically a few days a week, I'm basically always dropping up cheese in boxes to kind of a meeting point, and off it goes throughout the country. So it's consistent. You're constantly packaging. Sure. Apart from making it in farm work, you're constantly in there boxing up cheese and sending it off.
Thanks, Michael. And Sharon, the same. Just how do you ship your product or move it?
So mine, again, goes with couriers. We send it out in a cardboard box with sheep's wool liners. So we've abandoned polystyrene boxes many years ago, again, on the environmental impact. We put ice in there, and the ice is the only thing that still grates on me, because I haven't yet found a source of environmentally sound ice packs to put in there. And it may be out there, but I haven't found it yet. And we send direct to the customer with an overnight courier service. this year has been an absolute nightmare because the curries have been overrun. So it's been quite stressful, and if I could help it, we wouldn't do a fraction of the mail order we do. I would much prefer the low food miles that is local sales.
Very good, thanks. We're just 12 o'clock. Just in a sentence or two, Michael, can you just say, for the audience that's on here, we'd fairly substantial numbers this morning, just in one sentence or so, is what would you, if somebody says, I am considering going into goats today, what advice would you give them?
The first thing is that you'll definitely have to absolutely nail down who is going to buy your milk. There are, as you've said earlier on, there are select few companies or businesses that will actually buy it, and it will definitely depend on where in the country you are, because some of the big people won't actually drive to you because you won't be on their route. And if you are going to supply a cheesemaker, you'd want to be close enough that you can bring the cheese, the milk, or to the cheesemaker. So that's the kind of one of the biggest issues you will find.
That's perfect, Michael. And the same, Sharon, if somebody's considering going to go into meat goats or that, what in a sentence, what would you really encourage them to do initially?
Make sure you buy the healthiest goats you possibly can. There are a lot of hidden goat diseases out there which your vendor may not tell you about. Make sure they're healthy, and buy the best stock.
That's great. I think that's a good tip to finish with anyway. I know it's in the goat sector, but with any particular sector. Okay, we're just over 12 o'clock. That's it for this morning. We hope you found the presentations useful. We had loads more questions. I think we had over 50 questions typed in this morning, but we have recorded each of them, and we'll hope to follow them up. Both either myself or maybe Michael or Sharon might be good enough to send an email just answering them, and we will address those questions after. I'd like to thank sincerely Michael and Sharon for their time, and they're very interesting presentations. And as I mentioned at the start, you can find out more details at Boyne Valley Farmhouse Cheese on Facebook, and Sharon's website, which is goat-meat.co.uk. That's correct, isn't it, Sharon?
Yes, that's right.
And remember that today's and all the other farm business options webinars are made available for you through the Teagasc website. Next week's webinar is on adding value to farm produced food. So with Eddie O'Neill and Carol Griffin of Teagasc and Loretta Kennedy from Mama Bear Food. So I think it'll be an excellent follow-up to this week's presentation. That's it for this morning. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe and goodbye.